Uh-huh. Here comes trouble.
Government agents, scientists, soldiers, master criminals, secret formulas, monsters and midgets. None of them belong in this swamp. Only one thing does. The Swamp Thing. Adrienne Barbeau and the Swamp Thing, an outrageous pair in the incredible adventure that grows on you or all over you. The Adventures of the Swamp Thing. The comic book legend lives.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a new episode of Heroic Efforts. Thank you for joining us once more. I am one of your hosts, Andy Foreman. I am also sitting here with Mr. Martin Fisher.
I have risen from the swamps to tell you this movie made me bust.
And moving right along, I'm also sitting here with Mr. Nick Talamante.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
I think this is going to be a pretty fun episode because if you didn't already tell, we are talking about Swamp Thing. Martin didn't just jump out of the swamp for no reason. He jumped out to talk about Wes Craven's classic comic book adaptation. This was your suggestion, Martin. So
it was. I forgot.
Yes, I like it. Like, I'm excited to talk about it. Like, but we'll get into that.
Yeah.
For anybody who doesn't know, Swamp Thing got a movie back in 1982. It's incredibly cheap. It's incredibly campy. I think you're all going to have a good time watching it if you do. But we should really get started with the history of the character before we really jump into the film itself. And the genre, like, as a whole of where it was. Because keep in mind, way back 42 years ago in 1982, the only real comic book adaptations that got any traction at all were the Christopher Reeve Superman movies, the Batman 66 show, which had at this point been off the air for 15 years, the Incredible Hulk TV show, which was wrapping up, and like the Wonder Woman TV show. Those were like the only things that had any merit at all. Yes, there were some Captain America movies, and there was like a Doctor Strange pilot and an Amazing Spider-Man show, but nobody cared about any of those, and none of them lasted more than like 13 episodes. So that was pretty much where the genre was at this point. And I think it's important to bring up, like, we can kind of skip over Batman 66 and Wonder Woman because those are just so campy. But if you compare this to Superman 1978 and the Incredible Hulk TV show, it kind of shows like where this falls in that ranking. This is there was some good stuff being done with characters at the time. It sure was in its infancy, but I think the most apt comparison will be the Incredible Hulk show, particularly because Swamp Thing is that archetype of the man turned into the monster tragic figure in comics. He was created by Len Wein and Bernie Wrightson, and it, like, Martin, you and I are both pretty big Swamp Thing comic fans. Those original comics are a lot more mature than you would anticipate given the time they came out, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, they are some of the peak 70s, both from Marvel or DC. They were the peak 70s horror comics for me. What they did tonally is like not at all what you would expect from this world. And I mean, it's always been debated like, oh, does Swamp Thing fall under the Vertigo or DC lane? It's like, he's pretty obviously DC. He started in DC. And it does, the comics themselves don't really go for that hero feeling. They definitely go for like a more horror story element. And I mean, like, even the very first original Swamp Thing comic isn't even like the Swamp Thing that we know anymore. It's quite literally like just a horror tale that lasts like 8 pages. But yeah, it's if you ever get a chance, I would highly recommend dear listeners to seek out the original issue runs. They're both reprinted. They're all reprinted now. They're easy to find. And the artwork in it is fantastic. It's Bernie Wrightson. The story work is actually surprisingly really good for what it's trying to be. And their run basically ends on an adaptation of this movie. So hey, I cannot recommend that original comic run enough. Plus, you got the Alan Moore stuff, which is also equally more fantastic, I would say.
Yeah, it's weird because the comics themselves sort of follow the Incredible Hulk TV show structure, and they're also very proto Hellboy, where it's kind of just a monster wandering around and stumbling into various other horror subgenres. Like there's vampires, there's robots, there's like mutant men, there's all kinds of different stuff going on in those comics, and it really seemed like just an excuse for Len Wein and Bernie Wrightson to create this monster anti-hero that they could then explore any type of horror story they wanted to do, which is what Mike Mignola did with Hellboy and so on and so forth.
Absolutely. Swamp Thing, from his genesis, is a horror superhero. If you do a Swamp Thing adaptation and you don't have some kind of element of, like, even if it's like the sequel to this movie, which does like 50s sci-fi B-movie creature feature kind of deal, if you don't follow like that kind of horror-ish influence, you're not doing Swamp Thing justice, I feel. And, hey, it's like we've had a surprisingly thick amount of Swamp Thing adaptations in the last, 40 years, so...
He is like probably the third most adapted DC character in live action after Superman and Batman. Yeah. I would say. That's so like bizarre. As far as the
just fucking nuts.
Yeah, it's so weird. It's like you got Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman had basically 2 live action versions. Like the Flash has had 3, so I guess he's kind of tied with Swamp Thing. But like it's like, who would have ever thought that like the Flash and Swamp Thing were going to be the next 2 below like Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman? It's so weird. Like over Green Lantern or Aquaman, like it's crazy.
Yeah, Swamp Thing is all over the place. He's had a cartoon, he's had a live action television show, 2 of those actually. He's had 2 movies, another movie down the pipeline. He's appeared in so many other cartoons just as a side character. The man's all over the place, and I appreciate it as a Swamp Boy myself. I appreciate that fact.
Again, the character is so much mature than the name Swamp Thing would have you anticipate, because the Len Wein, Bernie Wrightson stuff is these very well-written, kind of creepy, old kind of, let's just say like EC Comics tales, but like with some real emotional depth to them. I think that would be fair to say. And then you get Alan Moore doing it, and it's just like it blows everything else out of the water, and it's some of the best stuff you've ever read. And he does with Swamp Thing what he also did with Miracle Man or Batman or Superman. Like it's just top tier science fiction horror writing. And this character has had 2 of the greatest runs in comics within like a decade of each other.
Yeah, very true, very true. And it's so bizarre to also think of like, as we talk about adaptations and Swamp Thing as a character, it's like, this is also a character that I think has had well over 200 issues published about him, which is also just like, what? This is Swamp Thing.
Yeah. It's something that keeps us coming back to him. And there was something about him that attracted Wes Craven to this film.
Money.
Because this film, yes. Well, yeah. Cha-ching. No, this movie is directed by Nightmare on Elm Street and Scream's own Wes Craven, which is something we see a lot of in the genre of a horror director coming in and doing like a low budget or lower risk adaptation of a comic book character. Now, this is about as low budget and low risk as you can get, but it's also like weirdly the most comic booky.
Very much so. Very much so. And I looking at it now, I kind of see why they went with Wes Craven, why they probably approached him at the time, because he had his 2 major hits up to this point were Last House on the Left, which is a grungy, dirty forest movie, which also has movies in it, but in the wrong way.
Cutaways to humor that doesn't work.
Yes, bizarre cutaways to humor. He had that, and then he had The Hills Have Eyes. Yeah, so which is also weird hillbilly monster things up in the mountains. So I feel like I kind of see the vision when you see that filmography. And he had just finished doing A Deadly Blessing, which is a great little underseen gem I highly recommend people check out. Nobody fucking saw that movie. It bombed, I believe, upon release, and so Craven was probably desperate for some kind of work, and they were like, we can get him for super cheap, so they swooped in on him, and I see the vision of getting Craven to do it. And honestly, I think to this day, I think up until he did Scream, this was technically like, I think Craven said like this is the biggest crew he had ever had in a movie, all the way until like Scream in 1996. So fascinating enough.
That was probably just doctors and nurses on hand to give everybody tetanus. Clean urethras after they were finished with a day of filming, because like this is a disgusting looking movie.
Oh,
like, this
absolutely. My God.
This is
God.
like Go
Can I
ahead,
just
Nick.
say, like, on that note specifically, man, that is, you captured like the one feeling I had in this movie, aside from it just being kind of like fucking boring. One of the biggest thing as I was like watching it, I was just kind of like, God, this looks. I don't think a film's ever made me like so uncomfortable from the perspective of like empathizing with the crew, because so many people, like half of this movie, like 50% of this movie is people getting thrown into this like literal swamp. And I'm just like, this is disgusting. Like, I don't know if anyone's like ever like lived by or ever like been in like swamp water or anything like that. Like, I was just getting flashbacks when I lived in Florida. I'm like, this fucking sucks, dude. Like, that would just being in the marsh and all that kind of shit. Like, they're just constantly falling in. I'm like, ew. I just feel gross watching this shit.
We'll talk about the plot of this movie, of course, and what little there is, but there is like scenes where you can see like people laying in the water, and there's a shot where it's like a young kid, he's like supposed to be dead or dying, his hand is in the water, supposed to be dead, and then you see it move ever so slightly, which makes me think a fish just totally swam by his hand. He's just like, ugh.
Yeah. Probably what they had was like alligator wranglers to kind of make sure that there were no alligators or like poisonous snakes, and that was about it, because every other freaking swamp creature is in there. Like, it's some of them are hiding in suits.
Oh yeah,
The army gear.
It's pretty well reported that this movie, they constantly had to deal with alligators and snakes on the set, like all the time while filming. So a big part of their budget went into snake and alligator wranglers.
It must be one of those things where, like, about 2 days into filming, you're like, ugh, Swamp Thing couldn't have gone to the city after this.
Dude, I can't imagine being like one of the like poor like fuckers in the suits in this movie, like the different monsters, including the Thing himself. Because this shit would suck so much ass. Not only are you in like this grimy ass, hot ass, humid ass swamp, and you're in this stupid ass latex suit, so you're just boiling alive. But then on top of that, like Wes Craven's like, yeah, so I'm gonna need you to get like fucking hip deep in this water, this goddamn murky ass mud water. You know what I mean, dude? I'd be so pissed. There's probably like just shit crawling up in you, like while you're falling over constantly, because it's all the action scenes in this movie. It's just like, so what are we gonna do? What's the choreography? So you're gonna throw them in the water.
Yeah, it's like the working title for this movie was Trench Foot.
Yeah,
like,
seriously. I have mentioned this on my Twitter many times, but good old Dick Durock, who played fucking Swamp Thing in this movie and in the sequel and in the like 70 episode fucking television sequel series, this man was dedicated.
The sequel series, the show on USA, that probably had a bigger budget than this.
It absolutely did. But yeah, it's that man was committed to the role. He's the Christopher Reeve for Superman. That's what Dick Durock is for Swamp Thing. And I gotta say,
real Swamp Boy.
And like he would mention like working on this movie, he's like working in that suit and being in the water was the worst part, because essentially that suit would retain the water that you were in, so you would be carrying 30 pounds of water weight on top of the fucking suit. And he's like, I almost drowned like 3 times on that movie.
God.
And you're gonna drown in a Swamp Thing suit.
Right.
Like,
What a way to go.
They'll never find him.
I guess we should just talk about the plot of this movie, because there is no plot. We'll briefly summarize the plot of this movie, and then we'll just go into the stuff we liked or hated about it.
Yeah, and look, I understand we're also like the guys that talked about Ghost Rider for like 2 fucking hours straight, but I promise this time, like, there really genuinely is nothing to talk about with this, so it's just gonna be a nice quick summary.
Yeah.
Yes. So the plot of this movie is scientist Alec Holland is meeting up with Adrienne Barbeau, and he's invented some sort of chemical to grow things, and it's like very luminescent and
it's explosive for some reason.
Yeah, animated and explosive. And some other guy who in the comics is Anton Arcane and is actually a really great character, but in this he's just another guy, just some French dude, decides that he's going to kill him and take the formula, which he does, but he turns into Swamp Thing. And then the rest of the movie is just kind of Swamp Thing running around beating people up in various scenarios. And that's it. Like, there's nothing else.
God bless this movie. Listen, we'll get to some of the nitty gritty on the fact that like the evil Frenchman is Louis Jourdan, who is famous for like one other American movie, Octopussy. So Yeah, it's a very plot light movie, so we're not going to be doing a run through of it like we did with a lot of the other films. But I do want to say that, like, man, I will say, like, the first, like, 50 minutes of this movie is literally just, he turned into Swamp Thing. Now what's he gonna do? Roam around in the swamp. Great.
Literally.
Literally. And then you get to the, like, last 10 minutes where the actual rest of the movie happens in fucking Anton Arcane's weird bayou castle, where he has a pigman sidekick that he transforms. And then, for whatever fucking reason, he's just like, well, that didn't work. I guess I'll take it myself. And then he turns into an also evil pigman monster.
Man Bear Pig.
Man Bear Pig.
We'll go through the cast of this, because Ray Wise is Alec Holland.
For
He's
5
in
minutes.
it for yeah, and then boom, he's gone. And then Adrienne Barbeau is in it, like carrying this movie on her back. Like
Absolutely.
she is
100%.
she is a trooper in this
As
movie.
we know, she can carry a lot with her back, so.
Then there's Louis Jourdan.
Mhm.
Louis Jourdan as
Jourdan.
Mr. Anton
Louis
Arcane.
Jordan.
Yeah. And then there's various central casting thugs that get put into various G.I. Joe outfits and thrown off of fan boats.
You don't remember the bandana wearing ferret? That guy?
Yo.
Where they're just like, he
Yo.
dies in the movie and they fucking leave his bandana and his gun on the
bandana.
dinner table.
That's his memento.
Right. Oh man, you got him, and then you got, okay, I didn't realize this, but I'm fairly certain that the other, like, main henchman guy, the one that's like, I feel bad about what I'm doing, I'm pretty sure he's the
Bruno.
I'm pretty sure, yeah, Bruno. He's the henchman in Darkman that Darkman turns into at one point. I think that's the same guy.
Let's see. I think you're right.
Yeah,
That's him.
The one that he acts really weird in at first.
Yes.
Man, I will say, just on the note of the cast, like Ray Wise, it's Ray Wise. He's great in the like only 5 minutes that he's in this whole fucking movie. And then Adrienne Barbeau, obviously, like, and we'll talk about her, but truly carrying this film. Like, this film would literally be nothing without this poor woman putting up with this dumb shit and walking through the swamp. And then Louis Jourdan is interesting and deserves his own section, to say the least. But I will say this: aside from those, like, the main three people, all the goons, like everybody else in this film, there is no acting. Just to be clear, like, there's no fucking acting. Like, it's all dog shit. But
Yeah.
I will say, God bless them. God bless all the side cast, because these people are truly trying. Especially good old Bruno. He's giving it his all. Is it good? No, but God bless him. He is truly swinging for the fences.
He is. He's trying to have pathos with his side role character, where he's like, oh, he feels bad about what he's done, and then he feels even worse after being turned into a tiny pig man. For some reason, plant goo turns you into a tiny pig man. So.
This is from that era of comic books where it just does anything. This is the Prometheus goo before Prometheus. It's just like, it'll do anything. It doesn't even matter.
This is the goop. I mean, it literally looks like the fucking TMNT Mystery of the Ooze shit.
It does.
It looks like the turtle ooze.
It does. It is exactly that. See, this is the real cinematic universe's Swamp Thing in 1990s TMNT.
Hey, what else lives in a swamp? Turtles.
Turtles. That's right. How is that not a crossover that we've got? We've gotten fucking Batman versus the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Aren't they all under? They're all under like Warner Brothers.
Well, no, but
I'm not
the
sure.
comic rights are through IDW, who will license that shit out to anybody. So
Gotcha.
I'm pretty sure No More Talking Productions could get the Turtles license to us if we just sent a nice enough letter to IDW.
Hey, I've heard decent things about those comics.
no, yeah, they're
No,
fun. They're great.
Oh, yeah.
It's
They got way more story than The Miss.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we've already gone over the whole plot. That's so different from all of our last episodes, where like the plot is like half of the fucking episode.
Yes, no, the plot is over. Just so you guys all know, like anybody listening to this is like, wow, they're really brushing over it. It's like, no, go watch the movie. That is it. Like, if you wanted me to take you through every scene of him going through the swamp and just describing what he does, we'll have a commentary for this someday. But that's not this.
Here comes trouble.
I mean, I made this point in the outline. I think it'll be a good talking point for us to sort of chew on. This really is like an 80s version of a 50s B movie. And by that, I'm talking about like the bad B movies that nobody remembers. Because like you look at Creature from the Black Lagoon, right? That is like how you should have done this, like with story and characters and a 3-act structure and things that are happening. And, like Creature from the Black Lagoon is infinitely better than this. Like it's not even fair to compare them. But it's like, how in the hell did like a major director or someone who at least became a major director, at least 3 stars, like, and seemingly unlimited access to a swamp, how did they just not make, how is it closer to like the giant Gila monster or the brain that wouldn't die than it is to like Creature from the Black Lagoon? Like, I cannot believe that it like falls that short of like the best 50s B movies.
It has to be a case, and I'm not sure if this is what happened, but it's got to be a case of they were told they were going to have a bigger budget than they actually did. And then like a week or two before shooting, they're just like, hey, we lost like $2 million. So you got $2.5 million. Go make a Swamp Thing movie. Also, we're going to have to cut out some action sequences. So just go punch some boats.
Okay, there's a lot of boat punching in this, and it's pretty good.
Hey, you know what? There's like one great effect where he like punches the boat and it like fucking splinters off, and the 2 guys like fly out over him. It's great.
That's pretty fun.
There's some great stunt work in this fucking movie. I do have to say that. And also, I mean, like, listen, okay, it's not that long, it's not that great, but Swamp Thing fighting a pig man with the sword is pretty fucking cool.
Like on paper, it's cool. Like, and I just literally finished the film like 10 minutes before we start recording, so it's like fresh in my mind.
Right.
It's cool if it didn't look so goddamn lame.
That's what
you know
makes
what I mean?
it
Like,
cool though, Nick.
Like I can get down with some dumb shit, as you guys know, but like, it's so goofy and like to the point where I'm like, if it looks so cheesy, where I'm like, I'm not even having fun. This just I feel embarrassed. I feel embarrassed for these guys.
It's Louis Jourdan as a pig man with unblinking eyes, swinging a sword around in a swamp, tripping in the water while Swamp Thing is just like fumbling around carrying all that fucking water weight on his suit. And then Adrian Barbeau gets stabbed in the tits.
Do you think they really put Louis Jourdan in that suit, or do you think
it's of course not?
You think Louis Jourdan? You think he's going to be doing that?
I don't know that you know that it's like, yeah, they stuffed Louis Jordan into that suit.
I wish. His Frenchy frog legs couldn't carry that fucking suit. Are you out of your mind?
I would love to see behind the scenes, like in the behind the scenes of Nightmare on Elm Street 4, where the Freddy Krueger stunt actor is all mad in the hot tub. He's like, "You've been shooting this for 6 fucking hours. If you can't get it, it's time to finish." Like, I would love to see Louis Jourdan just sitting on the side, like, "Fuck this movie."
Oh my god, that's what you needed. Okay, listen, I don't love Nightmare on Elm Street 4, but you needed like a Rennie Harlan type to make this specific Swamp Thing movie, because you would have gotten some insane shit, like a gigantic Swamp Thing chest or whatever with like people's souls coming out of it and shit. Like you needed to get a little bit more wacky with the concept, because there's not enough on paper to make this movie work. I like this movie. I really enjoy it, but you needed more meat to its bones, and it's like a great way to have done that was just go a little fucking out there in the weird factor. Don't make everything a pig monster.
Well, that's my exact point in comparing this to Creature from the Black Lagoon, because they had a swamp, they had a pretty decent monster suit and a stuntman who was willing to wear it, and they made like a science fiction classic because the story is there. Wes Craven had pretty much the same amount of resources as far as just like same type of story, and there's just nothing. It feels like they showed up on the day and just like invented the scene like 5 minutes before they shot it.
That's also how they made the suit.
There's a whole lot. There's a whole lot of just meandering in this film. Yeah. Like, we're not even joking. Like, just shitting on the film aside, like, there truly, genuinely is half of this movie of people just kind of fucking around in the water. Like, they're just kind of like awkwardly trying to maneuver in this marsh, or they're running randomly through the reeds, or they're like in a speedboat going absolutely fucking nowhere. Like, there really is absolutely nothing going on most of the time in this film, and that's what's so just kind of boring about it. And that's why I was just tuning out watching this. I was just like, man, ain't nothing going on but a fucking swamp. You know what I mean? And they didn't even do anything interesting with it where it's like, oh, the aesthetic of the swamp, like the bayou and the fog rolling in, and and the mystery of the swamp, and anything you could have done that was interesting with this setting, they didn't.
Yeah, it's
and that's what kind of like blows.
Yeah, it's one of those things where if you, like me, watch a lot of hyper low budget like horror films, and a lot of which are like set in like the woods or whatever, the quick thing you'll pick up on is like, wow, this movie's an hour and 5 minutes long. Why are 45 minutes of it stock footage of the forest? This is
I know it's literally like the Chooper that they talked about on Red Letter Media, where just people are wandering around like environments to pay for.
Yeah.
Like it's so there's nothing to it. It literally is like the Beast of Yucca Flats, which if nobody knows what that is, I was very excited to watch it as a kid because I loved Tor Johnson and Plan 9 from Outer Space. I'm like, ooh, another crappy science fiction movie. And I watched it with my friends at a sleepover, and it is the most boring shit you have ever seen. It is Tor Johnson with a little bit of scar makeup on him, just wandering around the California desert doing nothing. Like absolutely nothing. Like it's one of those things we should all right, we'll just skip to this. Like I put in the notes, this would be awesome if you were a kid at Blockbuster, and by that I mean it would look awesome because the theatrical poster for this is great. Like the fact that it's like Swamp Thing, like the legendary DC Comics character. And if you grew up reading Swamp Thing and then you see it at Blockbuster, you're like, holy shit, there's a Swamp Thing movie and the Nightmare on Elm Street director directed it. Like I gotta see this. But it's like the movie is being sold literally on the box art, and there might as well be a blank tape within there because there's nothing to it. They sold a poster and that was it. It's like the first Friday the 13th movie, which, by the way, has at least triple the story of what this has.
Yeah.
Which is saying a lot.
A lot.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, man, if you're writing the Swamp Thing script, it's like one scene of him going through the swamp, and then maybe another scene of him fighting something beautiful or whatever, and then maybe one other scene of him in the swamp, and then that's it. Everything else needs to have a point or have an action beat to it. There's a great sequence where they do like this moment of beauty in the swamp where he's like looking at the flowers that bloomed where his lab used to be, and it's a very nice, touching moment. And then there's another fucking 15 minutes of him bumbling through the swamp, and also the fucking Anton Arcane's like men bumbling through the swamp, and then Adrienne Barbeau bumbling through the swamp, and then like Louis Jourdan in his fucking like car being driven around, and then they like dub over him to do an an Australian guy's voice, and they do
this is such an important point. Most of this movie, and I'll let you finish your point, and we'll get back to this. But like specifically, this entire movie's fucking ADR.
Yes,
like I don't think they recorded anything actually like on site with like a mic, because it just sounds so jarring listening and watching this film. I was like, that is not their voice. Like this is not matching up at all. This doesn't sound like they're speaking on set. This entire fucking movie is ADR. I'm sorry, you like triggered me. I'm just like, I had to bring this up.
It's because they had the boom mic up, and all they could pick up was the fucking sound of the flies and the alligators getting too close.
I was gonna say, like, if they saved any on-set audio, it would just be people yelling at Wes Craven, like, "Why the fuck are you making us do this again? Like, this sucks."
Fucking the only audio they could get of fucking Swamp Thing is Dick Durock, like halfway into the swamp sinking. He's like, "Get me the fuck out of this thing!"
Gurglings.
When Louis Jourdan is just watching from his trailer, like, "Wow, that sucks." Anyway. I'm the top billed actor here.
Wes Craven was like, "Don't go so hard on me. I gave up a college professor English job for this."
Well, it's funny. Wes Craven's like, "Listen, I haven't sunken that low yet. I haven't done The Hills Have Eyes Part 2 yet, okay?"
Which, okay, we should just talk about this for a little bit. Like, this is just a brief aside, but like, Wes Craven seems like a lovely man. Scream is a fantastic movie.
Classic.
Nightmare on Elm Street is a fantastic movie, one of the all-time great horror premises ever. I genuinely do not see the appeal of either The Hills Have Eyes or The Last House on the Left, besides the fact that they were that they were way more brutal than other movies at the time. But watching them now, I am incredibly bored watching both of them. Like, there's nothing entertaining about either of them for me. So Swamp Thing is just like another extension of that, of just people running around.
That's fair. I think from the perspective of like, okay, Last House on the Left and Hills of Ice are kind of fucking boring movies to watch now. They don't the exploitation aspect of them works for the time period, but obviously what is exploitation and pushing the boundaries 50 years ago is not going to echo the same way now as it did back then. I do admire them because it's like, hey, they did not have a lot of money behind their productions. Fucking The Hills Have Eyes was filmed in the deserts of Victorville, California, which is pretty close to where I'm from originally. So hey, I'm like, I know those hills. Those hills got them eyes. So that's pretty cool. I'm down with that. That's fun. But it is just like a thing of Wes Craven's a filmmaker I very much respect. I like a majority of his films, or at least I could see where he's coming from. But he is certainly someone who I think hated the genre of horror, and any he definitely did consider them to be lesser than. And that's why he, during the 90s, or like pre-Scream, post-Scream 3, he was on a streak of trying to get out of the genre, but never could. And I think he's never been a big fan of it. And that kind of reflects in how he handles a Swamp Thing movie, because I feel like if you get someone who actually like kind of digs the genre, or like probably read a Swamp Thing comic book growing up, would be like, yeah, let's get like let's get some weird tentacle fucking thing in here, or like have him fight like that fucking Anton Arcane like castle bit, like that's such a great, like that should be the last 30 minutes of the movie, not the last 10 minutes of the movie. That should be where you have like Anton Arcane's House of Horrors, where it's like, Anton Arcane's slowly turning into like this weird, like how he looks kind of in the comics, which is like an emaciated mongoloid look, have him turn into that slowly as the finale is reaching its point. And then it's like, as Swamp Thing gets deeper in the castle, you see the other like weird mutant creatures he's working on, and like there's some like fucking, even if you got to do like fucking the Ed Wood thing of like having a fake octopus just around and like wiggling the fucking tentacles around, have it fight Swamp Thing for a sequence, that's how you space this movie out. Is first 30 minutes the laboratory, all that setup, now he's Swamp Thing. 30 minutes I'm in the swamp fighting the goons, saving the girl. Hey, now we're in the weird castle for the last 30 minutes. There's your fucking basic act 1, 2, and 3, and your incline into a climax, into a resolution. There's your fucking script right there for this movie. That's what they should have done.
Movies like this need to reset themselves every 20 to 30 minutes to keep people interested, because they're incredibly low budget, and there's a lot of stuff that's not very good in them. So at least needs to be new locations and new things going on, and like, I really couldn't care. Like, in the last 20 minutes, just start introducing ghosts. I don't care. Like, reveal that Arcane is a vampire. Like, legitimately, who cares? Like, I know it's not true to the comics, but that's very on the nose, or very true to like the spirit of those comics.
Yes, and here's the thing: it's like, I'm coming from the perspective of, and I know Andy follows me on this, where it's like, I do like this movie. I do enjoy it. I like it. I see the vision to a degree, but I think there's so much work that should have been done in that script before they even started rolling. There should have been a lot more care put into the production. You should have gotten a filmmaker that at least was just like, yeah, let's try something else with this. And I will say, it's like, I'm going to cape for this movie right now. When we talk about it one day, Return of Swamp Thing is like exactly what I described in a movie. They have fucking fun with it, and they're just like, yeah, let's have a weird elephant man in the climax or whatever. Let's have a guy who turns into a brain monster at the end. Fuck it, have fun with it. And I think it's a more entertaining film because of it. Now, I don't know if it handles the dramatic elements nearly as well as this one does, air quotes. But I will say, like, that is a much funner Swamp Thing movie that embraces the wacky 50s sci-fi roots of the character.
Right.
Well, what blows my mind is, first of all, I love your idea for how this film should have been made. Like, that's just kind of clear cut. And what really baffles me the most is that you have the formula, not only how you laid it out, I think that's awesome, like having it be just, Anton's House of Horrors at the end of it. I just don't understand how, at the very least, how you have this setting and how you have this kind of concept, and how the fuck, kind of like how Andy alluded to, how the fuck do you not just, at the bare minimum, just rip off Creature from the Black Lagoon?
Sure.
Like, how the fuck do you not see how that story is laid out and just be like, okay, I have no, like, let's just say, and I'm not saying that Wes Craven is, but let's just say, when he was coming into this project, he has no money, very little experience, and he is just artistically bankrupt because he has no love or idea on how to handle this. I don't understand how he didn't just turn around and be like, okay, well, we're just going to make like a slightly different Creature from the Black Lagoon. Because at least then you would have had something. This film has absolutely fucking nothing. And it baffles me, because if you do just a little bit digging, mind you, I'm not a swamp boy. I don't know anything about this character. I don't really care about this character. And I'm baffled by how popular he seems to be. But, God bless. But just doing my even cursory research, like, the Unmen, which is like the mutants, like Anton's like freak shows, like all his like crazy dudes. Seeing the artwork, even just I think it's Mike Hartthorne did like a run of them where like it's fucked up, it's really gross looking, and but it's really sick in that way. And I don't understand how you don't even just take a monicum of that because I'm sure that was present in the comics before that run. So I don't even understand how you don't take like a modicum of that and just be like, oh, cool, we're gonna throw in some just like fucked up mutants, and it's all gonna take place in this big ass like Louisiana bayou mansion, and he's gonna be like going through, and there's just like a weird dude in a tube, and there's a little guy running around in the background. There's like a weird fucked up like turtle man somewhere.
Right.
Like how do you not just get nutty with it and just like we're making a movie about a fucking plant guy? Like how do you not just take that and be like, fuck it, we're going crazy?
Here's what you do: you take Island of Lost Souls, the 1930s movie, and you make Arcane Dr. Moreau, and you make the Bela Lugosi character Swamp Thing, and that's what you do. Like, and then all the rest are the Unmen.
I think this is bold of us to assume that Wes Craven even watched the Universal monster movies and didn't fucking hate them. So
it's again, lovely man. Seems like a very lovely man. But yeah, you know who would have been a great director for this? I kid you not. George Romero.
Oh, absolutely.
George Romero would have been perfect.
He was too busy making a much better movie this year, Creepshow.
I was gonna say, yeah, like he made a comic book movie, and it's much better than this. It's I don't know why. I don't know why I like this movie. I just do.
Neither do I. Listen, I don't know why you do either.
I think I can say like the reason I like this movie is that tonally, I think it's what a Swamp Thing movie should kind of go for. A little dark with some attempts at character work. You should do it well, but this attempts at it. A little contemplative on the monster and everything. You've got the running around the swamp and all that. It's got the template of what a Swamp Thing movie should probably go for. It just doesn't handle it very well and doesn't have fun with the concept. And that's why it's like when we do talk about the sequel, I'm excited because like I think that does a lot of that better. It's not a good movie, but I will say it's a lot more fun to watch. And it's just I think this was for what it is for a movie that has like $2.5 million, which in today's money is still like $8 million, which is not a lot to make a Swamp Thing movie out of, which is like I think probably less than like the most recent television show had in one episode. It's not a lot to work with, so I'll give him that. Even like the costume, I think you can see the folds in it, of course, but I'm like for what it is, it's like it's pretty good. It's just they didn't have enough time or the resources to at least get the bendy parts to bend correctly. So
that the suit doesn't wrinkle like a trash bag when he moves. Yeah. There's nothing better than that.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, keep going. Sorry, no, I have another point.
They did learn that lesson at least in the sequel, where they're just like put a bunch of swamp shit on the suit to hide the fucking folds.
Because I was going to say, like, there is that awesome car attack scene where he just like is bumbling around the car, and then he like rips the roof off, and it just sort of flies away. Like it's here's the thing: like we were talking about, like what this movie should have been at the time, and I'm going to pitch it. It would have. What I'm about to pitch, I do know would make a better Man Thing movie than a Swamp Thing movie. But I'm just saying, it's 1982. You have $1 million. And the rights to Swamp Thing, this is what you would do, right? You just rip off Creature from the Black Lagoon for the first 40 minutes, where you have scientists going into the swamp. There was some accident here, like they find the burned down lab. What happened here? There's some clues, there's some evidence. All of a sudden, the Swamp Thing is defending himself.
Right.
Or they get attacked by some sort of like pirates or looters or whatever, and the Swamp Thing defends them. They're like, who is that? And they start researching into it. Then the last half of the movie, like middle point of the movie, which should mercifully be about 40 minutes in, should be where they discover what happened to Alec Holland. They discover the Swamp Thing, who they've been scared of, is on their side. Then they find Anton Arcane's House of Horrors, and from there it's Island of Dr. Moreau, with Swamp Thing eventually besting all of the Unmen. And at the end, he carries the pretty girl off, and everybody else dies. Like, that's what you do. Like, it's so simple. Yeah. Like, how did they fuck that up?
Yeah. There's a lot. There's multiple easier ways that they could have done a good Swamp Thing movie out of what they had with this. And my idea is pretty much is similar, but like to the point of like, it's like I said, my setup is like laboratory shit in the first 30 minutes. The second half is the next 30 minutes, the act 2 2 is basically just the swamp shit, where it's like, oh, you get Alec Holland and you get like Adrienne Barbeau, who's not really sure what that thing out there is. Then she finds out it's Alec, and then you get to the fucking castle, and then you go fucking ham with all the creatures and stuff. It's a very similar setup. This is so it shows that this should have been a basic fucking. This is a hole-in-one. You should have had Swamp Thing fighting some unmen at the end, or fighting some weird monsters before he gets to Anton Arcane, who looks like how he should look in the comics and not a pigman costume. It's baffling that they didn't do it, and it's not like there weren't people on this production that didn't care. I mean, this is produced by Michael Uslan, who is like who we have to thank for Batman 1989 being a thing, because he pushed for that shit so hard. He was, I don't nowadays I don't think people know enough about him, but like he was like the guy pushing for comics in the film industry. He taught. He was the first person to offer a college course on comic books. He pushed for the creative medium, and he pushed like these can be made into films. And he's like, I got 2 film rights, Swamp Thing and Batman. Batman's taking way too long right now, and people are still talking about the fucking Adam West show, which I don't think he likes, which is funny. So you've got these 2 IPs, so he's just like, I'll do Swamp Thing right now. So then he pushes for Swamp Thing, and I don't even think maybe it was another producer who was just like, this has to be a little bit more darker, or serious, or maybe it was just like Wes Craven really not giving a shit about the character or the genre he's working in at the time. And, I get it, because at the end of the day, this is Wes Craven, who after this went on to film The Hills Have Eyes Part 2, which is probably one of the worst films I've ever seen. And he openly has said, I did not give a single fuck while making that movie. I needed the money badly. And then he went on to make Nightmare on Elm Street right after that. So, he was on a path to destruction and then eventually making a fucking classic. So I get it. I get that things were not going well for him. This movie kind of reflects a desperation of I need money. So fair enough. But I do think like if you got someone who like George Romero, who does give a shit about the medium, who could produce like something that I think has like the right tone and the right monster work that you need for a Swamp Thing movie, they'd knock it out of the park. Fucking Jim Wynorski, who is still making movies to this day, God bless him, did a Swamp Thing movie, and you know what? I will watch that any day of the week before I watch this one again, because at least it's stupid fun. It's got annoying kids in it, but at least it's fun.
Yeah. Well, go ahead, Nick. Go ahead. I have a longer point.
No. So do I. So go ahead.
Okay, I was just gonna say, as Bill Bixby and Lou Ferrigno's strongest soldier, I would just love for people to go back and watch the Incredible Hulk show. Like, literally, I'm not kidding. Hit me up on Twitter, like DM me. I will send you a list of like the best episodes to watch. Because yes, some of them are duds, but that is a masterclass in late 70s, early 80s comic book adaptation and working with what you had. See, though there is not a single Hulk supervillain on that show, and it's some of the best Hulk stories ever told. Yeah, the best episodes. Like, there's no Abomination, there's no Leader, there's no Absorbing Man. I think in like one episode, there's like a guy who also turns into a Hulk-like creature. Like, so basically what I'm saying is they took the Hulk, who seems, I think I may have even said this on this podcast, but I've definitely said it to you guys off air, would be one of the hardest characters to adapt in a pre-CGI age. They made it work, and they sort of adjusted the concept. They didn't change the concept, but they just sort of adjusted the storytelling to what they had, and it's great. Yeah. Like, it's great. You have compelling, mature story. When the show is at its best, yes, there are a couple of clunkers in that show, but when the show is at its best, you have compelling, well-written stories that, no, they're not Alan Moore, but they can appeal as much to adults as they can to children. Like, Swamp Thing should have just been just as easy as far as making it work.
And you know what? I mean, I've only watched like maybe 10 or so episodes of the 1990 Sci-Fi Channel Swamp Thing show, but I'll tell you right now, it's a lot more in line, at least with the Incredible Hulk show, than this movie is, and like its attempt at like caring about the material that it's working with. Because at least every episode is almost a monster of the week thing. At least that's fucking fun. Something this movie should have tried.
Oh yeah, I have the first 2 volumes of it, and if anybody has the elusive out of print 3rd volume,
or hey, rights holders, what's the fucking issue? Why can't we get a 3rd volume or just reprint the whole series in a complete run? Why do I have to buy a bootleg Blu-ray of this?
Yeah, exactly. maybe when the James Mangold movie comes out. But we'll get to the James Mangold
We'll get there
movie
in a
later.
sec. We should probably talk about like what the overall reception to this film was at the time, because I honestly have no idea. Did people Roger Ebert, I think, liked this movie?
What the
Well, we should
fuck?
first, before we get to the reception, we should talk about one of the most infamous parts of this movie that takes only 2 seconds to talk about, which is Adrienne Barbeau's boobs, which
I'm about to bust.
yes, I will openly say on air, first pair of boobs I ever saw. And the reason for that is because there are 2 cuts of this movie. One, there's a scene where she's bathing in the lake, and it's very sensual, and it's very, and first off, we've been talking about how grody and disgusting this swamp is, so they made Adrienne Barbeau go naked into the swamp water and just be like, "Ooh, I'm washing off. Ooh, like my."
It's insane. It's also like out of nowhere too.
Oh.
Yeah, make sure not to get my Weird Al Yankovic perm wet, but I'm bathing. She has Weird Al Yankovic's hair. Beautiful lady, but her haircut in this is Weird Al Yankovic's haircut. But
She's still
anyway,
beautiful, goddammit.
Still beautiful.
Oh yeah, not a single thing wrong. But anyway, so she's bathing in there. There's 2 cuts. One where it's just a little tease, and then one where she gets out and you see the full rack.
Which is the version Nick did not see, unfortunately.
Exactly, yeah. Nick
no redeeming qualities in the cut I saw.
Nick would have a completely different opinion of this movie had it been
had that full shot.
The great thing is that cut with the boobs was accidentally released on home media with the original PG rating. So lots of families rented this big cartoon movie, this big stupid monster cartoon movie, and then all of a sudden 45 minutes in, there's just a minute-long scene of a woman's boobs bouncing around in the water.
Oh boy, or do they bounce?
Yes.
Insane.
So that was my first ever pair of boobs that I saw, because again, I rented this from Blockbuster. It said PG on it, and I'm sitting there with my grandparents, and all of a sudden that scene comes on. And I'm telling you, we used to have pizza and movie nights. The pizza that I was eating, dropped out of my hand. I was like, oh my God. And things were never the same after that.
Your grandfather's like, I don't remember this in the movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and again, that scene is fucking crazy, because even in the cut that I saw, so I unfortunately did not get to see the one with Adrienne Barbeau's titties actually out, but which is why this film was just even more boring and dog shit in my book. But even the scene that when it came up in the cut that I saw, where it's just kind of a tease, it's so random. It really adds to the just kind of grossness of this film overall. Not only is this a grimy ass swamp film, it's just also this really weird, out of place and randomly inserted scene. Leading up to that, it's her running around. She just narrowly escapes death, I think, and then Swamp Thing saves her from Ferret, one of the goons with a machete or some shit.
Good old.
Yes, that infamous
they have this,
Swamp Thing villain.
yeah, the one that we all know and love, Ferret. But anyway, she gets saved, and she has a moment with Swamp Thing, and then I don't know, it's a hard cut to her just naked, cleaning herself off in this dirty ass swamp water, and I'm like, ew! Why would you put this beautiful woman in this disgusting swamp?
Listen, the sequel again. Well, I don't believe it had full nudity going on. It has a bizarre scene, and I can't wait for you to see it, with Heather Locklear, where it's Swamp Thing is they're about to fuck, basically, and he just
she fucked the Swamp Thing.
But he's they can't do it like he is in this form, so he mind fucks her with some seed shit, and then she sees him as this beautiful Adonis man who's not Ray Wise at all, and they just make love on the fucking swamp floor. It's so fucking weird. Good old Heather Locklear.
That's straight out of the Alan Moore run.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
I know it's nowhere near as poetic or as well done as the Alan Moore run, but that's straight out of that run.
No, absolutely.
Wait, let me just clarify. Is in that scene, is he fucking her on some Demolition Man shit where it's like a mind thing? It's all mental, or is he just making her think that he's a beautiful man and then she's actually still fucking the Swamp Thing?
It's the Demolition Man thing but I mean they still, as far as I know, they still reach their point of climax, if you will. I do think that happens, because this unlike the Adrienne Barbeau character in this, who's kind of ugh, Heather Locklear is I want to fuck that Swamp Thing.
Ew.
She's like, I want to jump on that thing's bones. So, so she's
so nasty.
So it's a very.
Oh God!
I was thinking. So, do you think on the set of the first Swamp Thing movie, like, do you think Wes Craven and John Carpenter already knew each other, or was it a case of like John Carpenter shows up on set because he's dating Adrienne Barbeau at the time, and he's like, "All right, so we're gonna have Adrienne, you gotta take your top off," and you just see John Carpenter's cigarette smoke go across the screen. He's like, "Looking great, sweetie."
I think it's probably one of those things because you've seen John Carpenter in interviews before where they're like, "What?" They're like, "What did you think of Close Encounters of the Third Kind?" He's like, "I don't care for it." And I think it's probably one of those things where he's sitting there and she's like, "So, John, I'm going to take my top off for this movie," and he's like, "I don't care.
I don't care.
I don't give a shit.
It doesn't matter to me."
I've already seen them. I don't care if anyone else does now.
Yeah, makes no difference to me.
Do you think John Carpenter in like a modern era would have dated like an OnlyFans model, and he would have been like one of those ones that's just totally cool with it?
Well, I think there's a big difference between being an OnlyFans model and showing your boobs like a full-size
No, but I'm
like,
asking, do you think? Because he's just like, I'm the one that comes on them tits anyway. While he's smoking his 50th cigarette of the day.
On a maybe separate
I just
note,
want to mention
getting back to the movie.
That's my favorite director right there. I say that with love.
Oh yeah, look,
Hey,
he's
no
the goat.
judgment.
He's the goat.
Hey, no judgment at all.
Did you hear me disagree with you? But I will say this. So let me put my cards on the table. One, I'm not a Swamp Boy. Two, I don't care about Swamp Thing. I'm curious about the Alan Moore run just because it's Alan Moore. But otherwise, I really don't give a shit about Swamp Thing. And this movie sucks. So unlike these two here, I don't like it. This was a boring ass film. This committed the cardinal sin of what these cape shit movies, should never do in my book for me to not hate them, and that's be boring. It was a boring ass film. Like we said, most of this movie is people meandering in a swamp. So then I'm just sitting there simmering, being like, ew. Like you guys just run around in this grimy ass swamp for no reason. There's nothing happening. So on that note, this film in my book, it's a fucking dud. This shit sucks. That being said, I will say there are some positives. This is heroic efforts after all, so we're not just going to completely shit on the film. There are some things to like about it. So I just want to quickly go through, I think, things that are positive or that it did better than the rest of its parts. First and foremost, I think the first 10 minutes of the movie, I think they're pretty decent. I think they're okay. I was at least interested when I first turned this on. We open with Adrienne Barbeau's character on some helicopter, I think, flying into the government facility in some mysterious swamp. We get introduced very quickly to Ferret and the boys. So it's just all these it was to the point where I literally laughed out loud and said, "What the fuck?" When there's a shot of them, you see Ferret, one of the commando goons. So this Rambo he looks like somewhere between Andrew Schultz and fucking Rambo put together. So it's this dude just pops out looking goofy as hell with a bandana, and he's sneaking around the swamp, and then all of a sudden 20 other guys just pop up out of nowhere behind some random trees and shit in the water, and I'm that made me laugh, and I was like, okay, let's see where it's going. So the film I think does a pretty decent job in the intro when Adrienne Barbeau's character is getting introduced to what's going on at the facility. We get to meet Ray Weiss's character, and they have it's Ray Weiss, so he has a great performance. He's very charming. He immediately rizzes her up, and I was like, okay, I'm not hating this so far. This just seems interesting, and the set design was decent enough for definitely budget, you could tell, but it's decent enough. So the first 10-15 minutes of this movie, I'm kind of invested. It's okay, cool. I can see where this is going. This is interesting, and this is at the point where I thought, okay, surely there's no way they can fuck this up. It's just going to be a knockoff of Creatures of the Black Lagoon. I'm here for it. Let's just see how they do it. And then everything else just kind of goes to shit after that. At least first 15 minutes, pretty good. In terms of Ray Weiss, when he's in there for 5 minutes, he's great. He's very charming. Like I said, he's risen up Adrienne's character, and it's okay, cool. This guy's he has chemistry. He brings some kind of charisma to the set. Adrienne Barbeau, my God bless her. First of all, dime, absolute dime. She is a beautiful woman in every respect. And, shout out John Carpenter, my goat, just great taste. He's a lucky man for, dating her. And this is a lucky film for having this woman in here, because God bless her, she is the only reason this film is just, you don't immediately turn it off because it's so fucking boring. You know, she's trying her absolute damnedest, working with absolutely no script, nothing. You know, her character is somewhat compelling. She's a, you know, I guess rookie agent for what she's a part of, like some secret government facility working on plants and shit. So she's, you know, she's good and enough to be like, okay, I'm interested to see where it goes. She's kind of fish out of water situation, trying to figure out what's going on with the secret program. And then it gets, you know, poor thing just gets reduced to her also meandering around like everybody else. But at least she's like trying. Like it hurts my soul seeing Adrienne Barbeau, who is like, I think a pretty good actor and our actress in every other work, but my God, you literally can see, like, as an actor, I can see her just struggling in certain scenes where it's just like absolutely fucking nothing going on. Wes Craven, I know, has given her no direction, and she is trying her absolute damnedest to squeeze as much emotion or something out of this scene, and it's just very frustrating to watch. So God bless her for just trooping out the best she can. I can tell by the very end of this movie, when just all the dumb shit is happening, she's over it, but she's trying to stick with it like a trooper. So on her front, she's probably the highlight of this film, the only good fucking thing about it. And then lastly, there are plenty of scenes that I think are so bad that they're funny, and that's the only saving grace for them. The goons are like Bruno. Shout out Bruno. God bless Bruno. Trying his absolute best to act his heart out. Just, you know, not good in any way, but
Bruno,
it's
number
fun.
one, man. I gotta tell you, I love Bruno.
Bruno, number one guy.
Bruno, what's the matter with you?
The guy who pulls a snake out of his army camo green.
Oh my God. Okay, wait. You just remind me. That was the other, like, this film, that's part of the first, like, 15 minutes as well. Like, Ferret, like the random Andrew Schultz looking guy, motherfucker, like, they capture some agent dude, and they're about to, like, you assume interrogate him, and this motherfucker reaches in his literal pants, like not even like in his pocket, I think, just put his hand down his pants, pulls out a goddamn, like, river boa or some shit like that, just a fucking black mamba, and then just like, it's like, hey, and then like, has it bite the guy in the face. It's so weird. I was like, okay, cool. This film's gonna get like nutty. Like I'm kind of here for it. And then they do nothing else with it.
Well,
Forgot about that.
That's Swamp Thing 1982. Everybody.
Yeah, I think Nick put it very succinctly, and I like it a little bit more. I like the weird pigman stuff at the end. That's so weird, and I like the action scene with transformed Anton Arcane. I totally get where you're coming from, where Adrienne Barbeau is clearly just on autopilot by the end of this movie, because she was just like, I'm going to be filming Creepshow in 2 weeks, so I gotta go.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I will say, like, something that just came to mind right now too, just while we're talking about the few redeeming things. There's some random black kid that Adrienne Barbeau pulls up on, named Jude, and it's like this like Steve Urkel looking kid, right? And he's just chilling by himself, completely alone in the middle of this fucking gas station that looks run down. Yeah, running a whole little like Coke stand.
Do they have a banjo like needle drop as well? Like, 'cause that seems very on point. Yeah, that seems very on point.
Deliverance fucking banjo drop.
Yeah. He's
just like,
and I gotta say, for the kid, the kid is given like, it's not a good performance by any means, but like his delivery, I think, is funny. Like, it's so bad it's funny, where he's just very like nonchalant, dropping these like one-liners after one-liner. That's the whole character.
There goes
just
the
like,
neighborhood.
Well,
There goes the neighborhood.
Well, I mean, can you imagine being a child actor on the set of this thing? Like what are you gonna do? Like,
that's why he's only in like 3 scenes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say they really cared about this character. That's why they kill him off after 2 scenes, and Swamp Thing is to bring him back to life.
Yeah, when the kid got fucking domed, I was like, holy shit.
He's bleeding out of his fucking head.
I was like, what the hell, man? And then the like last thing to know, like, it's just not worth it talking about like really anything in this fucking film. But I mean, like, Louis Jourdan, his performance is fucking weird, dude. Like, he's just all over the place. He's dropping like if you were a like 12-year-old on Reddit and you had just figured out, like, just learned what philosophy was, like who the fuck Nietzsche was, and he's just dropping what in his mind he thinks is these incredibly like prophetic lines, and they're just so like overly dramatic, and you just have Louis Jordan, you just have him just being like, man or beast. If you look into the abyss, you will see that you are both. Like, just super like fucking lame and over the top shit. Like, his performance kind of blows. And the only like thing of note is when he turns into literally like man bear pig at the end in a goofy ass suit, and he just picks up a sword for some fucking reason. What really struck me, because again, I just saw this super recently. What really struck me was Swamp Thing and Man Bear Pig, Louis Jordan, they are fighting in the water, and it's very lame. It looks really stupid. It's not well choreographed. Adrienne Barbeau gets stabbed in the titty, not the chest, literally in the titty. It's ridiculous. And
how do you miss
Swamp?
How do you miss
Fair.
Sword? Like, they're gonna get in the way. Like,
Fair enough. But like when what like kind of irritated me is that Swamp Thing is beating up Man Bear Pig, takes his sword, and then you think, okay, in any other situation, what would he do? He would thrust down and stab him, and then you'd have a shot, right? So instead, he like does an overhead slash, and then just kind of sticks the sword next to him, and then Wes Craven tries to have this like what he thinks is a really cinematic shot of like the hilt and shit with like a Swamp Thing in the foreground or the background, and it's just like, oh man, you really tried with this one, and it's just very lame. This is very High School Movie Project. But anyway, that's Swamp Thing. Fuck this movie.
He had to grip it more, like like a soul, like a warrior knight or something. But he just kind of puts his hand out, like,
like it's a fucking stick you find in the woods.
Don't try and be cinematic. 78 minutes into this 82-minute like thing that everyone hates, like,
and still fuck up the shot.
This swamp
and still fuck up the shot.
Yeah.
Well,
oh my goodness.
I guess we should just talk about the reception today.
Shall I do the post-mortem then? Or Andy, do you want to talk about the reception? Because I only know that Roger Ebert likes this movie, which is really weird.
Oh God, what the fuck?
I couldn't find a lot of like critical reception. I really couldn't even find an accurate like box office gross for this.
Oh, it flopped at the box office. It flopped in theaters.
Okay.
You don't say.
It made a shit ton apparently on home video.
Because it's made to sell a VHS box. It's not an actual movie. Just like freaking Friday the 13th Part 1, which again, I've said is much better than this. But I'm looking at it here. Roger Ebert gave the film 3 out of 4 stars. I don't think he elaborated on that, but why? You know why? Because like you can look up some reviews with Roger Ebert where he talks about like Herbie or whatever, and he's like, oh, this movie's fine. He's like, but how does Herbie have sex with other cars? The man was like a gooner, like for sure.
3 out of 4
like,
stars.
Roger Ebert, one of the great contributors to like modern cinema discourse and a true towering figure in the medium of cinema. Total gooner, you could tell. It's just like he would just say random things during his interviews where you're like, "Damn, dude!" So the moment he saw those Adrienne Barbeau boobs in the lake, he's just like 3 out of 4 stars.
3 out of 4 stars.
Yeah, 2 of those stars are her tits.
Right. Now, I do want to quickly mention this movie came out in July 1982 and flopped horribly. Y'all know why? Here's all the movies it was releasing next to: E.T., Poltergeist, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, Firefox by Clint Eastwood, The Thing, Blade Runner. That's what it had to compete with.
Don't you love that? Don't you love that with all of those movies coming out, like if Martin and I had been like the age we are now back in that era, we would have been the only 2 people in the theater for Swamp Thing. Yeah. Like with our bootleg Swamp Thing shirts, because those weren't made back then. Like
hell yeah. Yeah, it was a dark time for Swamp Thing at the box office. Made a shit ton apparently in home video, and that's how it got a sequel and a fucking television series 8 years after the fact. So
and a cartoon,
which I own that.
I have a VHS tape of like 2
It's
episodes
like the
of the
first
cartoon.
two, yeah.
Yeah,
It only lasted for 5 episodes, but let me tell you, like, I will say, the first episode I watched religiously, because let me tell you, seeing fucking them having the balls to show fucking Alec Holland on fire running out of a fucking plant into the water is pretty fucking great for a kid's cartoon on like Fox TV. So, and hey, you know what? It had the thing this movie needed, the unmet. It had some guy that looked like Dracula. I think that was Anton Arcane. Anton Arcane looked like Dracula. There was a fucking Batman, like a man-bat creature thing. It had like a weird mixture of like, you know, just what this movie needed. Not fucking military guys, fucking unmet. Yeah. Let's get weird.
Yeah, I had the action figure from that show too, because they wanted that to be like Ninja Turtles or like G.I. Joe or something. You look that show up, there's 5 episodes, but there's a huge toy line for it for some reason. Yeah, I think they thought it would be the next like real Ghostbusters or something.
Yeah, they thought it was going to be huge, but unfortunately it wasn't. And but somehow the live action show on the Sci-Fi Channel lasted for like 3 or 4 years and had like over 70 episodes. So I don't know.
There must have been a lot of people like you and me, Martin, back in the day watching Swamp Thing on USA on their tube TVs in their dorm room.
Like, what a time to be alive. You just got Batman 1989 on like VHS tape. The Flash and Swamp Thing were on TV. What a time to be alive.
And there's a Captain America movie coming out.
There's a Captain America movie coming out too.
Captain America 1990 is like 10 times the movie this is. Isn't that weird? This seems like a movie that would be like unreleased and found later.
Yes.
Doesn't it?
Yes,
like Corman's Fantastic Four is more competent than this. You know, like unfinished nature of it aside, Captain America's more competent than this. Like it's weird.
It's very strange. It does feel like a movie that was not meant to be seen by people and is just a tax write-off, but here we are, and I guess it paid off at the end.
They didn't do a tax write-off Swamp Thing adaptation until 2019.
Right, yes.
Which is fantastic, and everyone should watch it. And Derek Mears is a very nice man, and if James Mangold ends up making this movie, he should rehire him.
Yes. We met Derek Mears, lovely guy, super sweet. It was awesome meeting him for 3 seconds. It was he seemed really nice and really supportive and really wanted to be in the Mangold movie, which is great. He should be in it. But there was as we said, there was all the other shows that we mentioned. There was a sequel, which I can't wait to talk about because I like that a lot more. But there was the 2019 DC Universe Swamp Thing show, which was canceled, which had 10 episodes and was canceled the day before the first episode came out. Because DC Universe was imploding as a streaming service and they didn't know what they were doing because they're just like, we got HBO Max coming. Who gives a fuck about this? Or also because they were really pissed because I guess where they filmed it give them enough tax cuts, I think. And so they couldn't do a second season because they spent way too much fucking money on this 10 episode season that was supposed to be 13 episodes. I assume part of that went to James Wan because he was a producer on this. So maybe he pocketed some of that for Aquaman 2. I don't know, but yeah, it's a really good show. It's 10 episodes, well worth it, much better than this movie. I highly recommend you check it out. It is a great Swamp Thing horror movie that takes inspiration from things like The Thing. So check it out. It's much better, and Derek Mears is a great fucking Swamp Thing.
Yes, and I'm certain that the James Mangold movie will be excellent because James Mangold makes Kino comic book adaptations. It's based on the first arc of the Alan Moore run. James Gunn has said that it's a straight up horror movie. Yep. Swamp Thing might finally get that perfect adaptation.
Yep. And
it might come. It might be here.
Even if he doesn't, if he doesn't get the perfect adaptation, don't worry. There's still like 2 movies, a cartoon, a live action show, 2 of those, fucking like 5 animated movies, and like a bunch of like spin-off cartoon show appearances. I don't know why he's so popular, but I love it and I'm happy for him, and I'm going to be there for every single one. Just like I was for Jonah Hex, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, that's Swamp Thing 1982. I don't know if anybody has any wrap-up thoughts, but...
I will say this. It's better than the Man-Thing movie.
Which we will be talking about.
Oh, God.
Oh, God.
I think we'll save the Swamp Thing versus Man-Thing debate. We should save that for Man-Thing.
Sure. I can't wait for when we talk about that movie.
Yeah, because there's going to be even less to talk about with that movie.
You thought we were briefing this one. You ain't seen nothing yet. All right.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, this technically counts as brief for us, but yeah, it's about the length of the Swamp Thing movie at this point. Like, so any closing thoughts?
Any closing thoughts, or are we just leaving?
Are we just going to end this the way the movie just sort of ends? Like, I mean, you know what? This movie deserves no less.
Exactly. Fuck this movie. Anyway, that was Heroic Efforts, everybody. We hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully this was more entertaining than the actual fucking movie itself. And we hope you will join us next time for a even, more and actually entertaining movie, something that's hopefully decent. And yeah, that was Swamp Thing. I'm over it. I don't want to talk anymore about this swampy ass, wet ass, fucking grimy ass movie.
All right, cue Born on the Bayou.
Exactly. Swamp Thing, he is amazing. He fights everything. Nasty.
Swamp Thing.
Hey everybody, hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, please be sure to subscribe and leave a 5-star review. It really helps us out. And be sure to tune in next week for more Heroic Efforts. Heroic Efforts is a No More Talking production, all rights reserved.